You should have thought about that before you tried to steal. The officer's voice was loud enough for everyone in the pharmacy parking lot to hear. The 91-year-old woman tried to speak, tried to explain, but he wrenched her thin arms behind her back and the words died in her throat. The handcuffs clicked shut, metal biting into skin so loose it bruised at the slightest touch. "Please," she whispered. "You're hurting me." He didn't loosen his grip. He pulled her upright by her wrists, and her legs buckled beneath her. She hit the pavement hard, her knees cracking against the asphalt. The officer stood over her, one hand still gripping the cuffs, and looked at the growing crowd of onlookers. Anyone else want to defend a thief? Her name was Evelyn Marsh, and she was 91 years old. She lived alone in a small house on Maple Street, the same house she'd lived in for 53 years. The paint was peeling now, the porch sagging slightly on one side, but it was hers. Her husband Arthur had died 16 years ago. Her daughter lived in California, called once a month, visited maybe once a year if Evelyn was lucky. Most days, Evelyn didn't mind the solitude. She had her routines. Tea at 7 in the morning. The newspaper, though her eyes weren't good enough to read it anymore without her magnifying glass. Lunch at noon, a walk around the block if her knees allowed it. Dinner at 5. Television until she fell asleep in her chair. She lived on Social Security, $943 a month. After rent, she'd had to sell the house 5 years ago, but the new owners let her stay as a tenant. Utilities and food, there wasn't much left. Certainly not enough for the prescriptions she needed. Blood pressure medication, cholesterol pills, a blood thinner because she'd had a small stroke 2 years ago. The prescriptions cost $260 a month even with Medicare Part D. Evelyn had been skipping doses, trying to make them last longer. 1 pill every other day instead of every day. Half a dose when she could break the pill cleanly. Her doctor had warned her. "Mrs. Marsh, you can't do that. You could have another stroke, a bad one this time." Evelyn had nodded and smiled and said she understood. But what choice did she have? She couldn't afford the pills and food both, and she had to eat. That Tuesday morning in September, Evelyn had gone to Riverside Pharmacy like she did every month. It was a 15-minute walk from her house. Longer now because she had to stop and rest twice along the way. Her knees hurt, her hip ached, but she couldn't afford to take the senior shuttle, and she certainly didn't have money for a taxi. The pharmacy was busy. She waited in line for 20 minutes, holding onto her cane, her canvas bag hanging from her other arm. When she finally reached the counter, the pharmacy technician, a young woman named Brittany with pink streaks in her hair, smiled at her. "Hi, Mrs. Marsh. Picking up your prescriptions?" "Yes, please." Brittany typed something into the computer, then frowned. "Okay, let me get those for you." She disappeared into the back. A few minutes later, she returned with 3 orange prescription bottles. She scanned them, and the register beeped. "That'll be $260.18. Evelyn's hands tightened on her cane. I thought Medicare covered more of it this month." Brittany checked the screen. "No, ma'am. Same as always." Evelyn opened her purse. She had $63. She'd counted it 3 times that morning. "I don't have that much. Can I just get one of them? The blood pressure one?" Brittany's smile faded into something like pity. "That one's $87. Evelyn's chest felt tight. She looked at the bottles, then at the money in her purse. "What if I just get half? Can you sell me half a bottle?" "I'm sorry, Mrs. Marsh. We can't do that. But I can put them back, and you can come back when you have the money." Evelyn nodded slowly. She felt the people in line behind her staring. She felt small and foolish. "Okay. Thank you." She turned to leave, her cane tapping against the tile floor. But as she passed the shelves near the pharmacy counter, She saw a display of the generic blood pressure medication, the over-the-counter kind. Not as strong as her prescription, but it might help. The box said $12.99. Evelyn stopped. She looked at the box. She looked at the money in her purse. $13. She could afford that. She reached for the box, but her hands were shaking and she dropped it. It clattered to the floor. She bent down slowly, her knees protesting, and picked it up. She looked at it for a long moment, then looked toward the front registers. There were 4 people in line. She looked at the box again. She put it in her canvas bag. She didn't plan it. She didn't think about it. She just did it. Because she was tired and her chest hurt and she couldn't afford to have another stroke. Because she'd worked for 42 years and paid her taxes and been a good person, and this was what it had come to. A $13 box of pills she couldn't afford. She walked toward the exit. Her heart was pounding. Her face felt hot. She'd never stolen anything in her life. Not even as a child. She reached the automatic doors, and they slid open. She stepped outside into the September sunshine, and for one moment, she thought she'd made it. Then a hand grabbed her arm. "Ma'am, stop right there." Evelyn turned. A man in his 30s, wearing a Riverside Pharmacy vest, was holding her arm, the security guard. She hadn't even known they had one. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me." I was going to pay for it." "Then why is it in your bag?" His voice wasn't mean, just tired, like he'd done this 100 times before. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She reached into her bag and pulled out the box. "Here, take it back. I'm sorry." The security guard took the box. "I still need you to come inside. We have to file a report. Please, I'll never come back. I promise. I needed it." "Ma'am, I don't make the rules. Come inside." He led her back into the pharmacy. People stared. Brittany at the pharmacy counter looked horrified. The security guard took Evelyn to a small office in the back. He told her to sit down. She did, her hands shaking, her cane across her lap. He said he had to call the police. Evelyn started to cry. "Please don't. I'm 91 years old. I've never done anything like this. I'm sorry, I have to." The police arrived 15 minutes later. 2 officers. One was older, maybe 50, with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes. The other was younger, late 20s, with a shaved head and arms thick with muscle. His nameplate said Officer J. Cunningham. He was the one who did the talking. "What happened here?" He directed the question to the security guard, not to Evelyn. The security guard explained, showed him the box, told him Evelyn had put it in her bag and tried to leave without paying. Officer Cunningham looked at Evelyn. His expression was hard. "Stand up." Evelyn stood slowly, using her cane. "Officer, I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake. I was going to pay for it. You were going to pay for it, but you didn't. That's called shoplifting." I know. I'm sorry." "How old are you?" 91. Something flickered in the older officer's face. He glanced at his partner. "Jay, maybe we can just..." "She broke the law." Officer Cunningham's voice was flat. He looked at the security guard. "You want to press charges?" The security guard looked uncomfortable. "I mean, it's store policy. We have to prosecute all shoplifting." Officer Cunningham nodded. He looked at Evelyn. "Turn around. Put your hands behind your back." Evelyn's eyes went wide. "What? Why?" "You're under arrest for shoplifting. Turn around." "But I gave it back. I didn't take it out of the store." "You tried to. That's enough. Turn around." Evelyn's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her cane. "Please, can't you give me a warning?" "No. Turn around. Now." The older officer stepped forward. Jay, come on. Look at her. She's 91. We can handle this differently. Officer Cunningham's jaw tightened. She committed a crime. Age doesn't matter. You want to let her go, you explain it to the sergeant. The older officer looked at Evelyn, then back at his partner. He didn't say anything else. Officer Cunningham reached for Evelyn's arm. Turn around. Evelyn turned slowly. She was crying openly now, tears running down her weathered cheeks. Officer Cunningham took her cane from her hand and set it aside. He pulled her arms behind her back, rough and quick. Evelyn gasped. Please, you're hurting me. You should have thought about that before you tried to steal. He snapped the handcuffs on. They were standard-sized, meant for adults with normal wrists. Evelyn's wrists were tiny, bird-thin, the bones visible beneath the skin. The cuffs clicked shut far too tight. Evelyn cried out, "They're too tight. Please." Officer Cunningham didn't adjust them. He pulled her toward the door. Evelyn tried to walk, but her legs weren't working right. Without her cane, without the use of her arms for balance, she stumbled. Officer Cunningham held her up by the cuffs, pulling her wrists higher behind her back. Pain shot through Evelyn's shoulders. She'd had rotator cuff surgery on her right shoulder 3 years ago. The joint was weak, prone to dislocation. The way he was pulling her arms, she could feel something straining, starting to tear. "Please," she gasped. "My shoulder. You're going to hurt my shoulder." "Then walk faster." They went through the pharmacy. Every person in the store was watching now. Some had their phones out. Evelyn kept her head down, shame burning through her. Officer Cunningham pushed through the front doors, and they stepped out into the parking lot. A small crowd had gathered. Someone called out, "What did she do?" Officer Cunningham's voice carried across the lot. "Shoplifting. She's like 100 years old." "Doesn't matter. Crime is crime." Evelyn's legs buckled. The pain in her shoulder, the tightness of the cuffs cutting into her wrists, the heat of the sun, the shame of it all. It was too much. Her knees gave out. Officer Cunningham didn't catch her. He held her wrists tighter as she crumpled, and she hit the pavement hard. Her knees cracked against the asphalt. The skin split. Blood bloomed through her thin cotton pants. She cried out, a sound more surprise than pain. Officer Cunningham stood over her, still holding the cuffs. "Get up." "I can't." Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. "Get up. I can't. Please help me." The older officer rushed forward. "Jay, for God's sake." He bent down, put his hand under Evelyn's arm, helped her to her feet gently. Evelyn was shaking all over now. Her knees were on fire. She could feel the blood running down her shins. The older officer looked at his partner. "Loosen the cuffs. Look at her wrists." Officer Cunningham looked. The skin around the cuffs was already bruising, deep purple marks forming. He didn't loosen them. "She's fine. She's bleeding. She'll be treated at the station." They put Evelyn in the back of the patrol car. The older officer tried to help her sit down without bumping her knees, but there was only so much he could do with her hands cuffed behind her. Evelyn sat on the hard plastic seat, her shoulders screaming, her wrists throbbing, her knees bleeding. The door closed. Through the window she could see people watching, filming. She closed her eyes. The drive to the police station took 10 minutes. Neither officer spoke. When they arrived, Officer Cunningham opened the back door and pulled Evelyn out by her arm. The older officer said, "Let me help her." But Officer Cunningham was already walking Evelyn toward the entrance. Inside, the station was bright and loud. Phones ringing, people talking. Officer Cunningham led Evelyn to a desk and told her to sit. She sat. Her wrists were numb now, the circulation cut off by the too tight cuffs. A female officer approached. She looked at Evelyn, then at Officer Cunningham. What happened to her knees? She fell. She fell, or you dropped her. Officer Cunningham's expression didn't change. She resisted. Evelyn's head snapped up. I didn't resist. I fell because you were hurting me. That's not what I saw. The female officer's eyes narrowed. Take the cuffs off. Officer Cunningham uncuffed Evelyn. When the metal came away, the skin beneath was raw and bleeding in places. Evelyn pulled her hands into her lap, cradling them. The female officer knelt down in front of her. Can you move your fingers? Evelyn tried. They moved, but barely. The female officer looked at Officer Cunningham. She needs medical attention. She's fine. She's bleeding. Her wrists are torn up. And she's 91 years old. Call an ambulance. That's not necessary. I'm calling one. The female officer stood up and walked away. Officer Cunningham glared after her, then looked down at Evelyn. His expression was hard. You brought this on yourself. Evelyn didn't respond. She just sat there, staring at her ruined wrists, trying not to cry anymore. The ambulance arrived 20 minutes later. The paramedics were kind. They cleaned her knees, bandaged her wrists, checked her blood pressure. It was dangerously high. 190 over 110. The younger paramedic, a woman in her 30s, looked at Evelyn with concern. Ma'am, when's the last time you took your blood pressure medication? Evelyn's voice was hoarse. 3 days ago. 3 days? You're supposed to take it every day. I know. I ran out. The paramedic glanced at her partner. They transported Evelyn to the hospital as a precaution. The hospital kept her overnight for observation. Her daughter was called. She flew in the next day, furious and crying. She couldn't understand how this had happened. Evelyn tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come. How could she explain the shame, the desperation, the $13 box of pills that had cost her everything? The pharmacy didn't drop the charges. Store policy, they said. The district attorney's office reviewed the case. They could have dismissed it. It was a first offense. She was 91. She'd returned the item. But Officer Cunningham had written in his report that Evelyn had resisted arrest, that she'd been combative, that the injuries were the result of her own actions. The DA filed charges. Evelyn's daughter hired a lawyer. His name was Robert Keene, and he was 63 years old. He'd been practicing law for 37 years, had seen a lot of injustice, but this case made him physically angry. He reviewed the police report, the hospital records, the photographs of Evelyn's wrists and knees. He watched the videos taken by bystanders in the parking lot. One video showed Officer Cunningham pulling Evelyn up by her cuffed wrists. Another showed her collapsing. Another showed him standing over her, not helping, while she bled on the pavement. Robert filed a motion to dismiss the charges. It was denied. The case went to trial. The trial was held on a cold morning in January. The courthouse was old, with high ceilings and wooden benches worn smooth by decades of use. Evelyn sat at the defendant's table in a dress her daughter had brought her wrists still bandaged even 3 months later. The nerve damage was permanent. She couldn't grip things the way she used to. Couldn't open jars. Couldn't button her own shirts without help. The judge was a man named Thomas Ellison. He was 68 years old, had been on the bench for 22 years, and had a reputation for being fair but firm. He'd reviewed the case file before the trial began. What he'd read had disturbed him deeply. The prosecution went first. The assistant district attorney, a woman in her 40s named Laura Sims, presented the case. Evelyn had taken an item without paying. That was shoplifting. The value didn't matter. The intent was clear. She called the security guard as a witness. He testified that he'd seen Evelyn put the box in her bag and head for the door. He said she'd apologized and returned it when confronted. Robert Keene cross-examined him. Did Mrs. Marsh seem like she was trying to get away with something? Or did she seem confused and desperate? The security guard hesitated. She seemed upset, like she knew she'd made a mistake. Did she cooperate with you when you asked her to come back inside? Yes. Did she resist in any way? No. Robert called Evelyn to the stand. She walked slowly, her daughter helping her up the steps. She sat down, placed her bandaged hands in her lap, and answered Robert's questions. She explained about her prescriptions, about the cost, about skipping doses, about the stroke she'd had and the fear of having another. She explained that she'd seen the box and panicked, that she hadn't planned it, that she'd put it in her bag without thinking, that she was sorry. Laura Sims cross-examined her. Mrs. Marsh, you knew what you were doing was wrong, correct? Yes. And you did it anyway. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was scared. But you knew it was wrong. Evelyn's voice was barely audible. Yes. Then Robert called Officer Cunningham to the stand. Officer Cunningham walked up confidently, his uniform crisp, his expression neutral. He swore to tell the truth. Robert approached slowly, holding a stack of papers. Officer Cunningham, you arrested Mrs. Marsh for shoplifting a $13 box of pills. Yes. Did you consider any alternatives? A warning? A citation? No. She committed a crime. She's 91 years old. First offense. She returned the item immediately. You didn't think that warranted any discretion? The law is the law. Robert held up a photograph. This is Mrs. Marsh's wrists after you removed the handcuffs. Do you see the bruising? The lacerations? Officer Cunningham glanced at the photo. Yes. Did you check to make sure the handcuffs weren't too tight? They were standard application. Standard application for an adult male, perhaps. But Mrs. Marsh weighs 97 pounds. Her wrists are less than 5 inches in circumference. You didn't think to adjust them? She didn't complain. Robert played one of the bystander videos. Evelyn's voice small and desperate. Please, you're hurting me. Officer Cunningham's voice. You should have thought about that before you tried to steal. Robert paused the video. That's her complaining, isn't it? Officer Cunningham's jaw tightened. She was being dramatic. Dramatic. Robert played another video. Evelyn collapsing. Officer Cunningham standing over her, not helping. Is that dramatic? Or is that a 91-year-old woman whose legs gave out because she was in pain? She resisted arrest. Where? Show me in this video where she resisted. Officer Cunningham didn't answer. Robert stepped closer. You wrote in your report that Mrs. Marsh was combative, that she struggled, that her injuries were the result of her resisting. Were you telling the truth? Yes. Then why does every video from that day show her cooperating, crying, apologizing? Why does the security guard say she didn't resist? Why does your own partner say she didn't resist? Laura Sims objected. Your Honor, the defense is badgering the witness. Judge Ellison looked at Robert. Sustained. Move on, Mr. Keene. Robert nodded. Officer Cunningham, how many arrests have you made in your career? I don't know. A few hundred? And how many of those were elderly people? A few. Did you handcuff all of them? Officer Cunningham hesitated. If the situation required it. Did this situation require it? A 91-year-old woman who couldn't walk without a cane? She committed a crime. That's not what I asked. Did this situation require handcuffs? Officer Cunningham's face flushed. I used my judgment. Your judgment. Robert walked back to his table, picked up another document. Your personnel file shows 3 complaints in the past 2 years for excessive use of force. All three were dismissed. Do you think this case might have been number 4? Laura Sims stood. Objection. Relevance. Judge Ellison leaned forward. I'll allow it. Answer the question, officer. Officer Cunningham's voice was tight. No. No. Robert looked at the jury, then back at Officer Cunningham. Do you feel any remorse for what happened to Mrs. Marsh? Officer Cunningham met his eyes. I did my job. That's not what I asked. Officer Cunningham didn't answer. Robert let the silence stretch. Then he said quietly, no further questions. The trial lasted 2 days. Closing arguments were passionate. Laura Sims argued that the law was clear, that Evelyn had broken it, that consequences mattered. Robert argued that justice required compassion, that punishing a desperate elderly woman for a $13 mistake wasn't justice. It was cruelty. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the foreperson stood. Judge Ellison asked for the verdict. The foreperson read it clearly. In the case of the state versus Evelyn Marsh, we find the defendant not guilty. The courtroom erupted. Evelyn collapsed into her daughter's arms, sobbing. Robert exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. Judge Ellison banged his gavel. Order. But Judge Ellison wasn't finished. He looked at Officer Cunningham, who sat in the back of the courtroom. Officer Cunningham, stand up. Officer Cunningham stood slowly, his expression wary. Judge Ellison's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. I've been on this bench for 22 years. I've seen a lot of things. But I have never seen a police officer treat another human being with the level of cruelty and disregard you showed, Mrs. Marsh. The courtroom went silent. Every eye was on Officer Cunningham. His face was red now, his jaw clenched. Judge Ellison continued. You saw a frightened, desperate elderly woman. And instead of using discretion, instead of showing an ounce of human compassion, you brutalized her. You handcuffed her so tightly you caused permanent nerve damage. You let her fall and bleed on the pavement while you stood over her like she was beneath you. And then you lied in your report to cover it up. Officer Cunningham's hands clenched into fists. Judge Ellison wasn't done. The jury has found Mrs. Marsh not guilty, and I agree with their verdict. But more than that, I'm appalled by your conduct. I am referring this case to the State Police Oversight Board for a full investigation. I am also recommending that the District Attorney's Office review your arrest reports for the past 3 years to determine if there are other cases where you've abused your authority. Laura Sims stood. Your Honor, with respect, Officer Cunningham isn't on trial here. Judge Ellison looked at her. Perhaps he should be. He turned back to Officer Cunningham. You took an oath to protect and serve. You failed. And I want to make sure everyone in this courtroom understands something. Wearing a badge doesn't give you the right to treat people like they're disposable, especially not the most vulnerable among us. Officer Cunningham's face was scarlet. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something, then closed it. Judge Ellison banged his gavel once more. This court is adjourned. The aftermath was swift. The videos from the trial went viral within hours. News outlets picked up the story. Police officer brutalizes 91-year-old woman over $13 box of pills. The public outrage was immediate and overwhelming. The police department issued a statement saying they took the allegations seriously and were conducting an internal review. The Oversight Board's investigation took 3 months. They reviewed Officer Cunningham's arrest records, interviewed witnesses, examined the videos. They found a pattern of aggressive behavior, particularly toward elderly and homeless individuals. They found 2 other cases where excessive force complaints had been dismissed without proper investigation. Officer Cunningham was fired. He tried to appeal, but the evidence was overwhelming. He lost his badge, his pension eligibility, his career. He left town 6 months later. No one knew where he went. The older officer who'd been with him that day, whose name was David Torres, gave a statement to the oversight board. He said he'd been afraid to speak up at the time, afraid of retaliation. He said he regretted it deeply. He said watching what happened to Evelyn Marsh had changed him. He asked to be reassigned to community policing, to work with elderly residents. His request was granted. The pharmacy changed its shoplifting policy. They implemented a new program. If someone was caught shoplifting food or medicine, they were connected with social services instead of being arrested. The program was named the Evelyn Marsh Initiative. When the pharmacy's corporate office heard about it, they rolled it out nationwide. Evelyn's daughter moved her to California. She couldn't stand the thought of her mother living alone anymore, not after everything that had happened. Evelyn's prescriptions were covered now. Her daughter had worked with a social worker to get her on additional assistance programs. Evelyn lived in a small apartment attached to her daughter's house. She had a garden. She spent her days reading, though she needed a special magnifying device now. Her wrists never fully healed. The nerve damage was permanent. But she was safe. Robert Keene visited her once, 6 months after the trial. He brought flowers. They sat in her garden, drinking tea, talking about nothing in particular. Finally, Evelyn said, "Do you think he learned anything, that officer?" Robert thought about it. "I don't know. I hope so. But even if he didn't, other people did. The jury, the judge, the people who saw the videos. Your story changed things, Evelyn." Evelyn was quiet for a moment. "I didn't want to be a story. I just wanted my pills." "I know. But sometimes the things we don't choose become the things that matter most." Evelyn looked out at her garden, at the tomatoes growing in neat rows, at the flowers her granddaughter had planted. She thought about that day in the parking lot, the feel of the handcuffs, the pain, the shame. She thought about the judge's words, the way his voice had filled the courtroom, strong and certain and unafraid. She thought about dignity and what it cost to keep it. A year after the trial, Evelyn received a letter. It was from a woman in Michigan whose elderly father had been arrested for sleeping on a park bench. The woman had seen Evelyn's story, had hired a lawyer, had fought back. The charges had been dropped. The woman wrote, "You showed me it was possible to stand up. Thank you for being brave, even when you didn't feel brave." Evelyn kept that letter in a frame on her bedside table. She read it sometimes when the nightmares came, when she woke up feeling the ghost of those handcuffs on her wrists. It reminded her that even pain could have purpose. One afternoon in early summer, Evelyn's granddaughter asked her about the trial. She was 12, curious, old enough to understand some of it. "Grandma, why did that policeman hurt you?" Evelyn thought carefully about her answer. "Because he forgot something important." "What?" "That every person matters. That being old or poor or scared doesn't make you less than anyone else." She reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her granddaughter's ear. "And he forgot that the people with power have the biggest responsibility to be kind." Her granddaughter nodded seriously. "I won't forget that." "Good," Evelyn said. "Don't." The sun was warm on her face. Her daughter was making dinner in the kitchen. Her granddaughter went back to her book. Evelyn sat in her garden chair, her damaged hands folded in her lap, and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Because she'd stood up. Because the judge had stood up for her. Because justice, however slow and painful, had come. And because somewhere out there, other people were standing up too. Finding their courage, demanding their dignity, refusing to be invisible. It mattered. All of it mattered. Even the parts that hurt. Have you ever seen someone in uniform forget that the person in front of them is human? It's one of those moments that sticks with you, makes you question everything, drop your thoughts below. And if this story reminded you why accountability matters, hit that share button. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is make sure people know they're not alone in what they've seen or experienced. Because every voice that speaks up makes it harder for cruelty to hide in silence.